I'll switch over to Churchill here because he's good on this bit. I like this bit. It's quite long. So on that note, Sir Winston Churchill writes, quote, "The crusading spirit had for some time stirred the minds of men all over Western Europe. The Christian kingdoms of Spain had led the way with their holy wars against the Arabs. Now, towards the end of the 11th century, a new enemy of Christendom appeared 1,500 miles to the east. The Seljuk Turks were pressing hard upon the Byzantine Empire in Asia Minor and harassing devout pilgrims from Europe through Syria to the Holy Land. The Byzantine Emperor appealed to the West for help, and in 1095 Pope Urban II, who had long dreamt of recovering Jerusalem for Christendom, called on the chivalry of Europe to take the cross. The response was immediate, overwhelming, and at first disastrous. An itinerant monk named Peter the Hermit took up the cry to arms. So powerful was his preaching that in 1096 an enthusiastic but undisciplined train of 20,000 men, most of them peasants unskilled in war, set off from Cologne for the east under his leadership. Few of them ever reached the Holy Land. After marching through Hungary and the Balkans, the majority perished by Turkish arrows amid the mountains of Asia Minor. The so-called People's Crusade thus collapsed, but by now the magnates of Europe had rallied to the cause. 4 armies, each numbering perhaps 10,000 men, and led by some of the greatest nobles of the age, among them Geoffrey de Bouillon, converged on Constantinople from France, Germany, Italy, and the Low Countries. The Byzantine Emperor was embarrassed. He had hoped for manageable mercenaries as reinforcements from the west. Instead, he found camped around his capital 4 powerful and ambitious hosts. The march of the Crusaders through his dominions into the Turkish-held lands was marred by intrigue and by grievous disputes. Some massacres, actually. But there was hard fighting too. A way was hacked through Asia Minor, and Antioch, once a great bastion of the Christian faith, which the Turks had taken, was besieged and recaptured in 1098. The Crusaders were cheered and succoured by the arrival off the Syrian coast of a fleet manned by Englishmen and commanded by an English prince, Edgar the Aetheling, great-nephew of Edward the Confessor. Thus, by a strange turn of fortune, the displaced heir of the Saxon royal line joined hands with Robert of Normandy, the displaced heir of William the Conqueror. Aided by divisions among the Turkish princes and by jealousy between the Turks and the sultans of Egypt, the Crusaders pressed forward. On the 7th of June 1099, they reached their long-sought goal and encamped about Jerusalem, then in Egyptian hands. On July the 14th, the city fell to the assault. Godfrey of Bouillon, refusing to wear a crown in Christ's holy city, was acclaimed ruler with the title of Defender of the Holy Sepulchre. Victory was made secure by the defeat at the Battle of Ascalon of a relieving army from Egypt. Many of the principal crusaders thereupon went home, but for nearly a century a mixed international body of knights, all commonly called Franks, ruled over a string of Christian principalities in Palestine and along the coast of Syria. Western Christendom, so long the victim of invaders, had at last struck back and won its first great footing in the Eastern world." End quote. So that paints a good picture. Churchill's good at painting a good picture.
Nice.